Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, 5-time Voice Arts Awards nominee, David Brower.
Thanks, Allan. This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest today from Seattle is Ron Carruci. He's a co-founder and managing partner at Navalent. They work with CEOs and executives pursuing transformational change for their organizations, leaders, and industries. And Ron, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
It was great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Is it rainy or sunny in Seattle? Those are the two.
No, it's a rare day of it's sun. Although typically every year at the last 2 weeks of February, we have sun. Typically we have sun in the 60s. This year we had sun in 30s, and that's on the heels of I'm sure the whole country heard about snowmageddon. We had 2 feet of snow here, and the entire city of Seattle just stopped.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't have snowplows and things like that.
Yeah, I have some of my kids live in Portland, and they had the same issues. So I'm going, I feel better about living in Colorado, I guess. At least we have the plans of what's going on. So tell me, what started Navalent, and you putting this team together to help these CEOs and executives all over the world make things happen?
14 years ago, so a couple of friends of mine and I were at a very prestigious and great consulting firm in New York City, doing what we love to do, which is work with organizations and helping them transform. And that firm got acquired by a much bigger firm. And when that happened, that changes the game a little bit, and you're a little bit more internally focused on feeding the dinosaur. Mm-hmm. And less focused on the craft of what we love to do. And I think at that point we realized, we love this work too much to not do it as often as we want to and have to spend time, just driving growth for the firm. So we can still do that. We can still have our own dream here. We can do it on our own.
What a gift.
I think interestingly, I don't know that we ever said the word, let's go start a firm.
Right.
But we quickly began to realize, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to have people with us to help do have larger impact on organizations that are global and complicated in their reach. And so the firm just sort of grew as we began to realize we needed more help and support. We couldn't just do it all ourselves.
How fascinating. Isn't that great when the for lack of a better term, the stars all line up and you go, okay, we're going to go this way. Oh, you want to join us? Great. Oh, and here they come. Great. And
David,
right?
I'm giggling because I thought, I wish I could look at our 14-year journey as the stars always aligning, but I think true to most accidental entrepreneurs, it's been a roller coaster of some great tailwinds and some great headwinds, and growing up and starting over and realizing you made some mistakes and having to learn again. So, I don't know that I can say that it was as pretty and neat as I would love to. I mean, revisionist history would say, of course.
Yeah.
But, for the entrepreneurs listening, I would certainly, who are thinking about embarking on beginning some venture of their own with their friends, I would not want to paint any picture other than fasten your seatbelt and grip tight to the bar.
Absolutely.
It's a thrilling ride, but it's a ride.
But it's definitely a roller coaster. Definitely a roller coaster. And when you come out on those peaks and reduce those valleys because of all the hard work and networking and consistent ethics and all integrity and all those kinds of things, all of a sudden you start getting really excited because then you see, this is why our hard work is starting to pay off.
Well, yes, and I we've had moments of that. We still have moments ahead of that. I think one of the things, we came out as practitioners on a love of our craft, not as people who build firms. And so one of the mistakes we did make early on was we didn't commit enough to go-to-market muscles that we needed to create because we had great reputations in the marketplace, we had great networks and followings, but that's not a way to build a future in a whole firm. And I think in the last 4 or 5 years, we realized and are certainly investing heavily and working hard now to recognize the world changed. And one of the things that changed in our field was about 700,000 new practitioners decided to come into this field, and that's not even an exaggerated count. When we began our careers, the work of organizations and leadership was a side dish to most people. We just happened to major in it as our main dish.
Gotcha.
Now, everybody's doing it. Doesn't mean they're doing it well. Doesn't mean they're qualified to do it, but they have shingles and business cards hung out, and they have websites, and they are doing podcasts like yours and doing all kinds of things. And so to the naked consumer who doesn't know the difference, we all look the same.
Oh, my gosh. What a challenge.
And so learning to set ourselves apart, learning to help people understand, well, no, we actually are kind of the real deal. And we actually, you have other people out there saying they do transformational change, and when you dig up behind it, what they do is the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
We do transformational change because we're systems organizational engineers and psychologists that understand how to construct transformation. But to someone who just Googles transformation,
and
you
has
don't know what you're
T-shirt,
going to get.
it has the T-shirt. So,
Right.
And I would think part of the other major thing that you bring to the table is your track record, your success with some of the world's greatest leaders, putting strategy to work, building governance designs. I mean, you've got to have an amazing client list that just blows these wannabes out of the water.
David, wouldn't you think that'd be enough? And I think here's the thing I'd love your listeners to understand. We thought it was.
Yeah.
We thought those laurels were enough. They are the price of admission, and they certainly get you onto the playing field in a different way when people look.
Right.
At the end of the day, that price of admission comes with a price tag for your clients. And when the client looks at you and your track record and your amazing work, and looks at somebody else who's a third of your age at high school and says, "Well, but they can do it for like a tenth of the price you do it for. Why would I hire?"
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, you could. If this is a price decision for you, you should hire them.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, if you are having severe chest pains, would you be calling the cardiologist and saying, "Hey, what you got any special this week on a stent?" Or would you want to know how many times they've done the surgery?
Exactly right. And I'm a voice actor by profession, and so we run into exactly the same thing. Clients who were spending really good money 3, 4, 5 years ago are now shopping for reasonable talent at ridiculously low prices and
Sure.
feeling good about it, which blows me away.
Well, and the unfortunate part is that they don't realize that you at your rate you can do it in 2 takes.
Yeah.
Sure, you can pay $50 an hour and get it in 30 takes. Your call.
Wow.
And you just wonder about this penny wise, pound foolish kinds of thinking sometimes when levels of talent have commoditized. At what point does that commoditization become a risk?
Exactly. Yeah.
But when your buyers are much younger than you,
Yep.
and they're tasked with budget constraints or their own anxieties over making decisions, and they want to play it safe, they're making foolish and short-sighted decisions that to some people may not introduce a quality risk, but at some point that approach to decision making is going to backfire.
Absolutely right. So, and I would think, I don't know this for sure in your industry, but I would think that some executive types who are wanting to climb the ladder quicker rather than better are taking that price point option, if you will, and they probably don't last very long in that career. Is that a reasonable statement?
That is often the case, right? When they begin their ascent and they're not prepared. I mean, that's the reason we wrote our book, Rising to Power, was because we saw so many executives heading up the ladder unprepared, and they'd call us as they were about to fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
And so, they make very short-sighted choices. They try and buy popularity. They try and, make everybody happy and make everybody loyal to them at the expense of the performance of the organization they were charged to lead.
Wow.
And that's fine for a steady-state world in which you have a lot of predictability about your markets or your customers or your products.
Yeah.
But one unforeseen headwind, and you're not prepared for that, and you can destabilize the whole thing, including your career.
In a heartbeat. One of the articles you wrote in Harvard Business Review, executives fail to execute strategy because they're too internally focused. Does that mean they're too focused on themselves rather than the big picture?
I think focused on themselves and their own emotional needs. I mean, for many executives, the anxiety toll of having to make hard trade-offs is really hard. But they're also organizationally internally focused. They're not focused on the marketplace.
Yeah.
One of the critical things about executing a strategy is the context in which you're executing it. The competitive context, the technological context, the regulatory context, and understanding how the consumers you're trying to reach and the markets you're trying to own will metabolize what you're bringing. But you still have lots of larger, especially larger, more mature organizations in that if I build it, they will come mentality.
Right.
They got way too many consumer analytics, but no meaning behind those analytics to make good choices. And so they're just forcing their way into markets or buying market share or buying competition and acquiring it, so you just minimize competition. And then really don't know how to compete, right?
Wow.
It's so common when I walk into an organization and I ask, tell me your strategy.
Yeah.
I get every counterfeit possible. I get the mission statement. I get the that year's objectives. I get their operating financial plan. I get the product quotas. I get the sales quotas. I get all kinds of metrics telling me what you want to accomplish this year, but nothing that tells me who you are.
Exactly.
And when I ask them, okay, well, so why would somebody who you want to pay you money pick you over the other people up the street doing exactly what you do?
Exactly. What?
They can't. They have no idea.
Isn't that crazy?
David, I'm like, this is 2019. Are we really? Was there a memo that you missed? I mean, how is it that we're still not understanding the fundamentals of how businesses work and how you compete to win?
Yeah.
But I think the reality is, and that's what I wrote in that article you mentioned, is that to make those commitments of distinction and differentiation, and building the capabilities to keep that differentiation and saying no to everything else, that is so much harder than most leaders sign up for.
And sometimes I ran into this recently, I don't know, probably the last 3 or 4 months, really, and maybe it's just because I started paying attention to it, but I've seen people in organizations start paying attention to the why.
Very true.
And is
that purpose?
The why. I mean, why are we doing this? What's the purpose?
Well, and I think people are not only asking, they're broadening the answer. It used to be, well, if you're in a public company, it's for your shareholders.
Sure.
And they were mostly economic wise. But I think people are now recognizing, there's still an interesting bifurcation out there in the debate over, are businesses responsible to serve a greater good? Are they responsible to their communities and to society and to the environment, and to serve the countries they do business in philanthropic and social justice ways? And you have a huge clamoring of people who say the answer is yes, and you still have people who are on the side of no. You're here for your shareholders, here for your benefactors, that's it. I have a feeling that the former side will eventually win simply because you're not going to try. You have generations of people in the workplace who don't want to work for organizations without a sense of purpose. The problem is if you answer the why without answering the who and the how.
There you go.
You really get a little bit of a short-lived campaign.
Yeah. It's like a three-legged stool. You got to have the who, the where, the how, and the why. And I mean, one of those legs fall off the stool, and you're done. It's and
I think even the harder part beyond the stools, David, is they all have to look up the same company, and so if you don't. Answer those questions as if they're part of the same organization, and you look like one of those people who had way too much cosmetic surgery. You just nipped and tucked and too tight. But I can't tell what kind of company I'm looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
And keeping those things integrated as you scale and grow, it's not easy. It is definitely a high wire act with no net, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
So when you're leading organizations, you're doing transformations in organizations. Do you work with their teams, or do you start at the highest level? How do you start that work of yours in motion?
Like any good effort to seize an opportunity or get out of a ditch.
There you go. Yeah.
Treatment without diagnosis is malpractice. So we start with a good MRI.
Nice.
I need to know what's happening under the hood of your organization. So we do a pretty forensic assessment of how the organization works and what story it's telling itself. And we put, all the voices you sent out of the room back in the room so you hear what we heard. And really, we have, pretty sophisticated analytical tools and data coding tools that help us stitch together a story that, creates a collective story of your organization that no single one of you is telling.
Yeah.
So it forces a level of self-honesty and forces a level of looking in a mirror and forced listening to your organization in ways you would not otherwise normally be required to do.
Fascinating.
And once we have a shared story, we can align on, okay, well, what is it you want the next chapter to be now that you have an honest understanding of the chapter you're in? And what's reasonable, what's possible, and what do you have to say no to make that chapter work? And then we can make choices around how to construct that journey. But starting from a place of honesty is always important. You wouldn't walk into that cardiologist with that severe pain in your chest and have that cardiologist say, oh, yeah, that's your left ventricle. You just need a stent. Let's go put one in.
Yeah, exactly right. Right. So when you do the initial MRI, for lack of a better term, and you lay all this stuff out to these people, do you ever find leaders, companies, whatever, just freak out? They're scared and they're thank you, but no thanks?
No, I mean, I think once or twice we've had to say to a client, so it turns out you're the problem. We'll find you somebody else.
Yeah, there you go. Oh my gosh.
Usually I think there's a great sense of relief.
Yeah.
It's a, wow, now it's all out in writing. I've been thinking these things, or we've been whispering on the hallway about these things, but now it's in black and white in front of us. We're all can all get around it. It hurts. It's hard to see it. But people are really shocked. People are really like, I didn't see that coming at all. Sometimes it's a self-justification mechanism to make themselves feel better.
Sure.
But for the most part, and there's a minimization of issues, in which case we can bring a little bit of heat to say, here's our point of view. But we never give our take on the data till they make sense of it themselves. So we sit people in a room for hours and hours to work through that data, to work through hard questions, to have hard debates, and say honest things to each other that they have long avoided saying.
The ultimate buy-in.
So that before we say, here's our point of view on this, because it's your story, and it's your story to own and take responsibility for. So if we short-circuit that opportunity with, here's the expert's take, you're now off the hook from owning your own point of view, and so we make sure that doesn't happen.
Wow. Your book, Rising to Power, it's an Amazon #1 bestseller, and you co-authored it with Eric Hansen. Does that help these high-level execs get a pinch of what you can do for them? That
was part of the intent. I mean, it was initially born of some pain. Sure. It was known for 20 years, David, that more than half of the executives rising up to senior levels of leadership fail in their first 18 months.
Yeah.
When it happened to somebody we were working with, it was personal, and we wanted to understand why. Why is it that we've been okay with this statistic for decades? Why does it keep happening? And how could somebody suddenly be identified as high potential, extraordinary promise, going to go the distance, become a disaster within a year?
Wow.
How does that happen? And I wanted to uncover every rock we could find. I wanted to leave no stone unturned to help make that pathway of ascent less risky.
Yeah.
So that people could stick the landing. The great news was that one of the things the data uncovered was, if the other half were sticking the landing, if the other half were thriving at the higher altitudes they were arriving on, what were they doing?
Yeah.
How is it they were making it work there and doing so well? So we were able to isolate the things that they were doing that can be learned and replicated.
Nice. And they can't, at some level, they can't fake it till they make it.
Yeah, and that's the problem, David. People are trying to do that. They think,
exactly.
It's too late. Because one of the things people don't tell executives is that when you get to a higher perch, say you've gone from director to vice president or whatever the higher altitude is of your organization, one of the forms of altitude sickness no one tells you about is your life is now on the Jumbotron.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is a megaphone strapped to your mouth 24/7. Everything you say is scrutinized. Meaning is attached to it. Everything you say is amplified and has meaning. You can't walk into the elevator and have small talk with somebody.
Absolutely.
You can't walk down the hallway quickly without someone attaching meaning to it. You could just be going to the bathroom, but someone's going to say, oh, my gosh, something's wrong.
And you don't dare put something on social media because it'll really blow up.
You're totally screwed. And people, I love the notion that it's very innocent. I want to just be my authentic self. That's great. But the problem is there are 30 versions of you out there. Which authentic version do you want to be?
Wow.
You can control that messaging so that at least you can minimize the number of versions of you that there are out there to a manageable amount. But people don't begin to realize those are the realities of that world till after they get there.
My goodness gracious. The website for Ron and his team is Navalent, Navalent, I can talk, .com. And you can learn about the organization and leadership transformation and how that happens on 3 domains simultaneously. You can download Leading Transformation in Organizations as an owner's manual. You can really get your feet wet in learning what Navalent can do for you and Ron and his team. It's just a fascinating process that you guys have, and you've been hitting the wall and hitting success and just keep pushing forward. So hats off to you, man.
David, thanks so much for that. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Listen to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower on the go. Downloads are available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any podcast app, and on our website at davidbrowervo.com/your20-minute podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.